Hello, thank you for joining us, and we're really delighted to be here for IDAD 2025. We're going to be talking about um, Literacy Junction, which has got a writing element, which is incredibly helpful, lively and playful, and also scanning pens are assistive technology support that you may find helpful. So let me introduce you to Nicola.
Hi, Julia. Thank you for having me. My name is Nicola Durrant, and I'm very proud to be one of the directors and also the person who has written Literacy Junction, which is a multisensory reading and writing intervention for young people that have not reached Year 3 age-related expectations yet.
And I'm Julia, I'm Head of Education at Scanning Pens, and I think we should share our presentations.
Okay, so let us talk about Literacy Junction. It was written because I identified the need for there to be an intervention that brought together the two elements of reading and writing. One of the biggest upgrades we have had is the characters that neurodivergent young people could relate to improve self-esteem, motivation, just to make the whole process more enjoyable. So the intervention, it's 10 minutes of reading and 10 minutes of writing. So that's 20 minutes a day that a young person would spend with a one-to-one adult. It really involves a very thorough assessment process, which can take a couple of hours, but it gives you a beautiful baseline of the type of skills that the young person has, just in terms of their strengths and weaknesses. And the beauty of the intervention is that you tailor it to meet the needs of the young person.
I've got a question, Nick. How appropriate would it be for parents? So I imagine a lot of the people joining us today will be parents and they'll be thinking about their own children. So is it something that they could access and learn to do, or is it just for teachers?
It is for anybody that really is happy to watch all of the training videos, which are part of the digital intervention. Certainly, we have had parents that have used it and have found it extremely useful. As I say, it's a very comprehensive walkthrough with videos showing you how to implement the intervention. So yes, absolutely useful for parents, for tutors, for teachers, teaching assistants.
If a parent was thinking, well, how do I know if this is appropriate for my child? What sort of indicators might alert them that this would be helpful?
Any young person where the traditional teaching strategies haven't worked. We are very, very much in our education system focused on synthetics, phonics programs. And for many of our young people, those just have not worked because they don't focus solely on the strategies that we know that many of our neurodivergent young people need, in terms of it being significantly more visual, more hands-on, multisensory, and building from, where the child is at. So it really is looking at, the child's attitude, I think, towards reading and writing. If they don't have a good view of themselves as a learner, perhaps if they've always struggled with traditional approaches, that's when you think, actually, this is an intervention. It's different. It meets the young person at their starting point, and it builds their confidence and their self-esteem and all of those things that we know are as important as the strategies themselves.
What sort of age range is this intervention and support appropriate for?
It's for any young person that hasn't reached Year 3 age-related expectation, that hasn't reached a reading age of around 7 to 8 years. Certainly the success that we've had with Literacy Junction has been seen with young people who are 14, 15, 16 years of age, that the strategies that are used are suitable to be used with adults as well.
Okay, well, let's move on and have a look at the actual packs.
So this is just a quick snapshot of the type of resources that you will be able to download and use. Those Literacy Junction packs are also accompanied by the digital videos, which any adult can watch in order to train themselves in the intervention. So very, very comprehensive, very user-friendly, definitely very bright, very colourful, very engaging, and also we have now added in the resources with the characters as well, and the positivity passport, so that a young person can visually see the progress that they're making over the course of time that they do the intervention, which, as we suggest, is a 10-week intervention, so 20 minutes every day for 10 weeks. We know that that's what our young people need, just in terms of building the fluency in order to maintain those skills in their long-term memory store.
Let's have a look at writing, Nick.
So in terms of the writing, 10 minutes of Literacy Junction, with the baseline assessment that is conducted, we look at these 3 areas: a young person's expressive language skills, just in order to check that expressively they are able to construct and articulate a sentence, a group of words that makes sense. We also look at a child's mechanical skills, just in terms of, how they hold a pencil or a pen, whether or not they are printing their letters, whether they are using cursive writing style as well. And then we also look at baseline spelling skills, whether they are able to spell phonetically regular words, common exception words. So it's very, very thorough in terms of what we look at. So this I think is what makes Literacy Junction unique. There are 3 different entry levels. So once an adult has conducted the very thorough baseline assessment for the reading and the writing, in terms of the writing, it's then looking at where the young person sits in terms of the entry level that you would start the intervention at. So there's entry level 1, 2 and 3. So entry level 1 is very much around those young people that are at the emergent level of writing, just beginning to express their idea in simple sentences. With entry level 2, those young people perhaps need some help in fine-tuning their sentence structure. And then entry level 3 is looking at moving our young people on in terms of being able to write 2 or 3 cohesive, simple sentences at the same time. And then in terms of what we will actually focus on, so entry level 1, it is about the composition of simple sentences, and it's very, very much the adult modelling and the child copying that. The bit that I really like about the intervention is that we use lots of what we call graphic facilitation, and that is the adult drawing out the child's ideas. So all of the writing is around what is of interest to the child. So if they're into Pokemon, Lego, dinosaurs, it doesn't matter what it is, we can actually use their interests in terms of how we help structure their writing. So entry level 1, as I say, it's a lot of adult modelling and the child copying. Entry level 2 is to really support that young in terms of the sentences that they produce and articulate, showing them how to build a sentence with more increasing complexity. And then entry level 3 is helping those young people just to produce 2 or 3 sentences, and then picking out an element of that sentence to work on and improve their skills in a kind of multisensory, tactile fun.
So graphic facilitation just means drawing. What if you're not very good at drawing?
Well, I'm not very good at drawing, but that, to be honest, that brings a fun element into the session, really, because often the kiddies will say, "Oh, let me have a go at drawing that." So it's just very simply providing that visual support to guide that young person's thinking. So by having the pictures there, it really just helps the young person to focus on exactly what it is they're composing. So a very simple level, it's a subject-verb sentence. So the cat is sleeping. And then we can improve on that subject, verb, object. So the cat is sleeping on the mat. And then we can get our young person, we can then focus on one element of that sentence to help them improve. So it may be looking at one of the CVC words, the consonant, vowel, consonant words, or it might be one of the high frequency words, common exception words that they need help and support with.
I think it's so interesting that the drawing can be done by the adult, the drawing can be done by a child. And actually thinking about this particular group of parents and learners who are likely to be here at the festival, you are likely to be seeing children who have a low level of confidence in their drawing ability, possibly because of dysgraphia or a dyspraxia type challenge. or anxiety around mark making. The drawing it's a way into mark making, helps you focus on those fine motor skills that help build the handwriting, the skills. As long as you've got that shared understanding of what that picture is, you've talked about it. So I'm looking here, I went to the beach. Look, the sun is shining, the waves are sparkling. It's a beautiful warm day. And look, there's a starfish on the beach and I'm going to put it into my bucket. I think even if the images aren't truly clear, as long as you've communicated using your language the ideas that you're going to be writing about, it doesn't matter if the pictures aren't pristine and brilliant. And as you say, Nick, you can have fun. Is that a starfish or is it scrambled egg? No, it's definitely a starfish.
Yeah.
And that introduces the fun element.
But what we have found with young people over the course of time is that it might be on, one session on a Monday, they write a sentence and then they're excited to come back on the next day and then continue and do a follow on. And certainly we've had young people that have, for the whole 10 weeks of doing Literacy Junction, they've almost created their own characters and storyboards and, chapters of different things that have happened. So it just gives that child that 10 minutes every day with an adult to focus on something that is truly interesting and meaningful to them, and to do it in a more kind of fun, kinesthetic, hands-on way. And then entry level 3 is where we want to get our young person being able to write 3 sentences following on from each other. But again, that's where we continue to always use the graphic facilitation to help them sequence ideas. I think when we get to entry level 3, it's about almost having a beginning, a middle, and an end. With lots of our kiddies, it's often the order in which things happen, so it might be that, oh yes, I went to the beach with Nan and Grandad, but then we had to come home at the end, and it's the bit in the middle that they struggle with. So you can do the first picture and the third picture and then have a discussion about something that's, happening in the middle. And then we have an entry level 3 extension, which is then where we can extend a young person's verbal expressive abilities, and we can start talking about making sentences more complex in terms of adding things in like the adjectives and adverbs and how they enhance our sentence and make it more interesting for the person reading their writing. Okay, now, so the main crux of the 10 minutes of the writing is obviously to produce our sentence construction, but within that, particularly entry level 2 and entry level 3, the young person has a go at doing the writing. And then as the adult, we can look at that writing, look at the baseline assessment that we've done and think, what different areas could we maybe pick out? About getting quite skillful with us as adults, looking and thinking, actually, we could focus on that CVC word there that they didn't spell correctly, or we could focus on that common exception word, and we can do some activities just around that one element. So just by focusing on one thing, it just gives that confidence and that self-esteem to tackle it in a non-judgmental environment.
That's the key, isn't it? It's the non-judgmental.
Yeah, could be a whole range of anything, whether it's a phonetically regular spelling, a sight word, or we might just spend a minute just thinking about letter formation of a certain letter that perhaps they haven't started in the correct place. But again, that will be different for every child because it depends on the baseline assessment as to what we would focus on.
Perfect.
So with many of our young people, it's thinking about developmentally where they sit with the mechanical skills and just helping them sometimes to, hold the pencil, show them how to hold it. Do they need a pencil grip? Do they need a larger triangular pencil? Perhaps they would benefit from a writing slope. It might be our young people who are at much, much earlier stages of development. They need to have just plain paper rather than lines that they can't keep within. So lots of different things we would look at. Online, you can download lots of supports and strategy sheets to help with letter formation. And again, with the baseline assessment, you will be able to see which letters the young people are able to form correctly, and they've got the correct starting points and end points. But again, if that's something that has been picked up, then we can incorporate that into the 10 minutes of Literacy Junction each day. Some of our young people, they perhaps need some kind of hand-over-hand support from an adult, or thinking about different rhymes that we could use to help them remember where to start their letters from. The B's a good one for that, because you can go down, up, and big fat round belly. You know, there's just different ways of trying to make it more fun, or using sand trays and things like that.
Yeah, all those multisensory opportunities as well. And when you are using sand or plasticine or whatever it might be to make those letters, you're focusing in on those fine motor skills, perhaps even making those shapes absolutely huge. So looking at your gross motor skills, on a lovely warm day, you can have a bucket of water and a brush, and you can be going out onto the pavement outside and making huge letters on the pavement to practice these shapes. There's lots of ways to introduce fun into creating these letter shapes.
The highlighter pen strategy is good for our young people that are perhaps a little bit further on. And again, he's just using the highlighter as just a little gentle guide to show them where the letters fit in within that highlighter. And it's good as well for young people that find it hard to start in the correct place on the margin. So these are just little top tips that if our young person needs that and we've identified that, these are things that we can build in to the 10 minutes.
It's a good simple method there just to indicate that something has popped above the line. I'm looking at the circle around the word shop on the letter P there. That's quite clear that that's just crept above where it needed to be on the line. That's a really good visual support. I like that a lot, Nick.
I think what we know with our young people, Julia, isn't it? It's that little and often every day. If we can just practice strategies like this, it will stick. What else have we got? So the writing mat for our young people to have that visual reminder in front of them, not only just while they're doing the Literacy Junction intervention, but to then take these skills back into a classroom setting as well. The alphabet arc is a huge part of Literacy Junction for both the reading and also the spelling element. It's one of my personal favourites because the kids absolutely love it. And you know, what we get our young people to do is to actually place the letters on the arc. So to make an individual arc for each child that's got Velcro on the back. And there is something quite satisfying, I think, about pulling that Velcro off and putting it on. But the bit is, as I say, is beautiful about is that when a young person is confident with the writing and also the reading as well, you then allow them to keep that letter on the arc. So again, visually, they are just seeing like, oh, I know another one. I've only got two now that, you know, so it's all that positive reinforcement and confidence. And certainly with the alphabet arc as well, you can use phoneme frames, so you can help them with the spelling and move from sort of, you know, two spellings that have two parts to them and then move up to 3, 4, 5. So the alphabet arc can really help with the complexity of spellings and understanding words just aren't made up of individual letter sounds. We start off with letter sounds, but then, you know, we have times when two sounds join together to make a digraph and three sounds make a trigraph. So we can start building the complexity of all of these skills into Literacy Junction as we move through.
So are we looking at a phoneme frame here?
That is a phoneme frame, absolutely. So, you know, what we can do with our young people is get them to have a go at a spelling. So this example is we might have wanted them to spell the word sad. And that example there is what they have chosen, S-A-H. So obviously that isn't correct, but we say to the young person, well, I'm going to say to you what you've written. oh, that doesn't sound right, and then ask them which bit doesn't sound right. So we're identifying the end. And then we might say to them, so we are going to choose which of these sounds will fit best in order to spell this word correctly. And we give them a choice of two. So we call that collapsing the goal. So rather than putting the alphabet arc out in front of them and being overwhelmed with all of the sounds that they could choose from, we just give them option choices. It's much kinder. They're more likely to have less anxiety about choosing between two rather than a whole range of sounds.
50-50 feels better, doesn't it?
So again, if you've got a young person that hasn't spelt something correctly, you can leave the bit there that is spelt correctly and again get them to collapse the goal. So give them a choice of two letters potentially, and then they can put it in and then have a go at reading and spelling it. And if that's not right, they can then change it. But it's all about just making it positive, really. We don't ever say, oh, that's not right. It's all, let's listen to this. Does this sound right? Does this look right? It's, yeah, just give them that confidence.
That use of microscripts. Does this sound right? Does that look right? I think that's such helpful advice, because sometimes we don't know quite what to say. And if we can just, before we go to a session, just practice our positive microscripts, we know we get to a point where you've got to provide a little bit of support, the right word's going to roll off your tongue too. So, bit of practice with the microscripts. Does that look right? Using your wonder, you take the pressure away. What's this?
So this is just another example of a strategy that we might use, particularly with an irregular spelling if it's a common exception word. Again, we're bringing in that element of using things like a visual, using colour to highlight perhaps the tricky part of a word. Because if we can use a visual image or something that stands out, the young person is more likely to remember it. I mean, that example there with princess, I absolutely love that one. I could always remember a young lady I was working with, she was one of these young ladies that loved to wear tiaras and stuff. So for her, it was absolutely perfect. With a strategy like that, if you can get the child to maybe draw the image of, just encompassing the tricky part of the word, if it's meaningful to them, they are more likely to remember it. And the other example we've got on there is the mnemonics. Get the young person to make up their own one, because if it's something that's meaningful to their life, they are more likely to remember it rather than us saying, big elephants can't always use small exits. Get them to make their own one. This is another favourite of mine, again, with common exception words. We've got young people that struggle to spell. And it might be, we say to them, right, so the word that we need to spell is was, and you give them the three letters, possibly wooden letters, magnetic letters, and you just ask them to actually place them out in front of them, going from right to left. So W, U, A, S. And again, if they don't quite get it right, you can say, oh, this one is correct. Perhaps we'll have a think about whether these ones are in the right order. So it's not, no, that's not correct. The shape of the word is lovely as well with who, because again, remember, lots of our young people are very visual in how they see the world. And they might look at a spelling and think, oh, actually, no, that doesn't look correct, or it doesn't look right. I do that a lot. I look at a word and think, I haven't spelt that right. So by, again, having those letters there, but they can switch around. Sometimes it'd be, oh, actually, no, that looks right now. And then you can draw the shape around the word. So they're more likely to remember the visual, the shape.
Yeah, there's lovely stories that you can pull into this to make it fun. Who got the gold at the Olympics? There you go. You've got a podium there, haven't you? Bronze, gold and silver. Your imagination can take those kind of activities a long way. Backwards chaining. What's that?
So with backwards chaining, so grab yourself a whiteboard. So for an example, if the child is learning to spell the word said, as the adult, we would write the S, the A, the I, and then leave a dash. And the child just puts the last letter in so that they have completed the word. So next time you practice it, you write the S, the A, and then 2 dashes, and the child writes the I and the D. So each time you do it, you're just adding on to the success that they have, but don't move on until they're confident with that. But the child is always doing the last bit, so they've got the finished word, the finished product. And again, it's all of those things to help raise self-esteem and confidence, which is what we're looking for. The other strategy on there looks a cover right check. That one's been around a long time, but we know that is effective for learning spellings because the child's looking at it, they're saying the word, they're covering it up, they're giving a go at writing, then they're checking it. So you're tapping into all the senses there. Other things I like to do, I quite often say to a child, I'll give you 30 seconds to write our keyword out as many times as you can, or go and practice writing it on somebody's back, or go out into the playground with a piece of chalk and write it as big as you can on the concrete. It's just whatever way makes it more interesting and more engaging. And we know that is what helps our young people think, actually, this is okay, this is fun, and I can see that I am improving.
Yes, bringing the fun in is so important.
Isn't it? Yeah.
So I'm going to steer the conversation on a little bit just to talk about how well Literacy Junction works with assistive technology and in particular with scanning pens. So over the last year, Scanning Pens and Literacy Junction have been doing some pilot work together in schools, which has been super interesting because it's been an opportunity for young people to work with learning mentor, supporting their phonics, supporting their starting points to help them move on. But they've also, during that time when they've been working with that person, been using a scanning pen as well to support with their reading. And it's proved to be a lovely partnership of two things working together. So when the young person needs that bit of reading support, and a lot of our neurodivergent young people also, as well as their writing challenges, may have some reading challenges as well. So it's a nice way to bring those things together. This is the Reader 2 that I'm just showing here, is a really helpful, useful addition. When you turn it on, the words which you can see on the screen appear. So scanning over the text, the words appear on the pen, and then either through a personal headphone or by listening to the speaker on the pen, you can hear those words aloud. And I think you will all relate to cognitive overload, that feeling of exhaustion that our young people can get, particularly towards the end of the day or at lunchtime after you've had quite a heavy learning session or been working hard. Actually, sometimes it's useful for a scanning pen to make lighter work of the reading jobs. Okay, so we were talking earlier about holding pencils, and I was thinking, just as you were saying that, about holding the scanning pen. And if you do have one of these, or you've ever been introduced to one of these, it's quite useful to have some advice on how to use it, how to hold it. So it's a great tool, but if you are holding it from the top or struggling with your grip, you're not going to get a very good output from it. So I'm just going to show you that when you are using a pen like this, you hold it towards the part of the pen where the controls are here. So towards the nose, that's where the camera is there. You're holding it towards the nose. And then when you are scanning, you're trying to make sure, I'm just going to use my handy dandy surface here, you're trying to make sure that the hand has got some support. So you're not dancing around in the air, but your hand is supported. And what will happen as the pen goes down onto the paper, now it will scan text. It's a text reader. It won't scan from screens like this. This is just to show you as I'm balancing up in the air here. But what will happen is the light will come on. Hopefully you can see that. And as you scan along that surface, what will happen is that you get that positive impact of pen on paper, and you can see it happening. And when that happens, then the words will appear on the screen and you can listen back. So the tool's quite useful because it's got a run wizard. That means that when you turn it on, if you first get a pen, you can set it up for that learner's needs immediately. So that might be left-handed mode, or it might be increasing the volume or creating word pause. For helping learners who really struggle with their writing, and I'm thinking about your children in particular here, there is a mode where you can plug the pen straight into a computer, and then instead of writing, which may be a bugbear, you can use the pen to scan text, and it will bounce that information through the charging cable directly anywhere a cursor is flashing. So that might be on a Word document or a PowerPoint document. When that happens, it means that you have got those words that you picked up off the page, those text-based words, appearing where they need to. And again, when we were thinking about cognitive overload, that just might be a really helpful way to save yourself when you've still got quite a lot of work to do. Particularly useful if you are doing a little bit of research, and instead of doing that bit of writing, you can just do that portable scanning.
Can you change the speed of the reading at all?
Yeah,
You
yeah, you
can.
absolutely can. You can slow it right down. So you can go for a slow
Mm.
speech pronunciation. You can change the accent. You can have an American accent or an Irish accent. There's a lot in there. And actually, if you are not a keen reader, that can make things fun,
Yeah.
because then you can be listening to those words with a slightly different accent. When I've had children in the past who really disengaged, actually changing up the sound of how the pen is speaking to you can just re-engage a learner who you felt that you might have loved. We've got pairing of SenStation and Literacy Junction, and we had some lovely data that came back. It was 20 months of progress in 10 weeks, which is just huge for those young people. And so when you're pairing a multisensory intervention like Literacy Junction along with Reader 2 reading support from scanning pens, assistive technology, that there can be huge improvements in single word reading, reading rate and accuracy. And the big thing, of course, that Nick mentioned earlier was that building of self-esteem and reading confidence. And you'll see at the bottom of the screen there is a link across to empoweringtech.com, Literacy Junction, and you will be able to have a look at the programme and see a little bit more. And of course, Nick also has got a website, which is senstation.co.
.co.uk.
There we go. So you can find out more about the programme there. So just to mention that on the Scanning Pen's website, support for learning to use the scanning pen, there's something called the Helping Hands Detective Agency. It's another free resource that teaches you how to use the pen. So that's not focused on the phonics or the support that you would get from Literacy Junction. This is just how do you use the pen, and it will support through comprehension activities. And I'll just share a few more ideas of things that you can do with the pen to make things fun, like for example using a labelling tool to create clear text on adhesive labels that you can then stick to anything you like at all. I remember my mum teaching me to read, and she stuck things all over the house: television, door, carpet, dog at one point. You you can stick a sticker to it and you can read it. That's great. But with a labeler, it just means that anything can be read by that pen, which is good. Okay. And I show you there the Jenga blocks. That's another way to introduce a fun reading and kinesthetic activity. So my example there is an activity from Danny Champion of the World, love that book, where you put the questions on the blocks, and then as you push the blocks out, you answer the questions. That's the end of the slideshow, and we're getting to the end of our conversation with you today. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation, you found it helpful. We are always willing to talk about scanning pens. We're always willing to talk about Literacy Junction. Please get in contact with us. So I am Julia at scanningpens.com if you need some additional support or want to talk about pens. And how can people get in touch with you if they're interested in Literacy Junction, Nick?
Just to contact me, Nicola at senstation.co.uk.
Perfect. Enjoy the rest of the festival. It's been wonderful being with you, and I hope we've managed to answer some of your questions along the way. Bye-bye. Thank you.